Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. How are you? It is Wednesday, August 19th. Those of you listening to the future podcast of the show, I don't know if this will confuse you, but I cannot predict the future. We don't know where we're going to go from here. But we are ready to roll out the show for today. And if everything works, we'll have Joan McCarter join us for our regular Wednesday visit. Bill, of course, has already started off with a morning tweet from his kitchen studio. Very true. Kagro X. That's me. David Waldman plays a game of let's throw this down the disposal. We might as well. I have a nice, powerful new half horsepower motor on the garbage disposal, upgraded from the quarter horsepower that came from the builder from whom we bought this thing 20 years ago. It's not brand new, but it's good and powerful, and we ought to throw various things down it, including the 14th Amendment, if you ask me. Donald Trump having set off a firestorm of amendment repeal ideas, and of course, those of you who listened to the show yesterday realize, you know this, not that the news media out there has bothered to tell you this, because of course they're focused on the immigration aspects of the 14th Amendment, but yes, we would remind listeners like Armando that the 14th Amendment does also cover the sanctity of the federal debt. Post-Civil War, that was an important point. It remains an important point. And wouldn't that be interesting if immigration ended up being just a stalking horse for repeal of the 14th Amendment, allowing Republicans to avoid constitutional complications in playing their debt ceiling brinkmanship games that we expect them to start playing when they return to work, if that's what you can call it, in September after the August recess. That would be really interesting. I don't think that's really the case, and certainly you could. I mean, if you were going to actually try to repeal the 14th Amendment, you could certainly just focus on Section 1. I don't think that there's anything in particular that would render Sections 4 through 5, or 2 through 5, inoperative by extension. I don't think there's anything that relies on Section 1 in order to make sense out of it. But all right, it's worth trying. Just keep in mind, I mean, I know everybody will want the focus to be on the fact that it was supposed to be an anti-slavery amendment, and you don't want to forget that. But, the federal debt is kind of an important piece of the puzzle in operating things going forward. However, that's not where the real news lies. Greg Dworkin will, of course, tell you where the real news lies. I will tell you where the obsessive news lies, and that is with another accidental shooting. I have another gun fail story to tell you. You have no doubt already seen it, heard it, read me tweeting about it. But I think I mentioned to you yesterday, just in the course of regular gun nuttery, that there were now Muslim-free gun stores. I'm pretty sure we actually fell on that topic briefly yesterday, and I mentioned there are several. One guy, I think, in Florida. That's right. In the context of talking about George Zimmerman and his crazy finger painting thing, we stumbled onto the gun-free or Muslim-free gun shop concept. That, of course, a reaction to gun-free zones. They thought they would be able to get away with this Muslim-free nonsense. And just like other gun nut fads, it spread like wildfire. And at another level, the story is very interesting in watching how local gun stores get local press to fall for the idea that they were the first one to come up with the Muslim-free zone signing. Although increasingly local media are seeing through this because there's a big splash about it nationally. Anyway, that wasn't the chief focus of the story for me. Chief focus of the story, or at least not yesterday, because at one of the copycat stores, I believe the original Muslim-free one is the one in Florida that George Zimmerman is hooked up with. I don't give him any credit for ferreting out the original. It's a gun shop that's near him in Florida. So, whatever. Anyway, a gun shop in Oklahoma decided to jump on the bandwagon and declare itself a Muslim-free zone. And I guess after having had the military kick the weirdos out from in front of their recruiting stations. You remember after Chattanooga that gun nuts started showing up outside of the recruiting station saying, we're going to guard these things because the federal government won't, which is a debatable point. But very shortly thereafter, the military asked people to get the hell out of there. Because as you'll recall, the first of our problems was Chattanooga shooting, the post-Chattanooga shooting, the one day, exactly 24 hours after the shooting, and after the military reminded everybody in the media and everybody working in the recruiting centers that it is not permitted at present for personnel to bring their own personal weapons for self-protection to these facilities. One Navy recruiter in, was it Gainesville, Georgia? Not Florida, but Gainesville, Georgia, as I recall, who defying the ban, and who knows how long he had been defying the ban. We're not really sure about that. But in defying the ban and telling a recruit that he had been defying the ban, and then showing him the gun as proof that he was defying the ban, accidentally shot himself. So time elapsed between reminding everybody, don't bring your guns to our gun-free installations because we're worried about accidental shootings, and the accidental shooting. 24 hours had elapsed. Then, of course, the civilians began showing up outside of the recruiting centers to provide their own so-called security. And I believe it was 3 days between starting to show up outside of the Ohio store, Lancaster, Ohio, storefront recruiting station. It was 3 days between showing up there and accidentally firing an AR-15 round into the parking lot. Now, having been kicked out from in front of the recruiting stations, the same folks, it appears, have decided to take up private security outside of the the Muslim-free gun shops, because the owners, I guess not having gotten enough publicity out of the first round of declaring themselves Muslim-free, have called the press and said, we're getting death threats from around the world, as far away as New Zealand. Well, you know what happens with death threats from New Zealand. They can't follow through because they're in New Zealand. But whatever, that was enough to issue a call to arms, and the gun nuts began showing up outside of the Muslim-free gun shops to guard those. And of course, the time elapsed between our finding out that there were people standing out front of the Oklahoma gun shop in question and finding out that one of them had accidentally shot themselves breaks all records. It was literally 20 minutes in between the reports. I mean, I don't know how long that they've been there, but this is all I've got to go on. In other words, the Fusion Network, in fact, reported at 5:08 p.m. Eastern Time yesterday, that was when they posted it, that they had been outside of and interviewed people at this gun shop. And where was it? Did I not put the Fusion story away? I remember very clearly, though, that it was 5:08. And what ended up happening was they went, and the store is in Oktaha. I have no idea how you would pronounce it. Oktaha in Muskogee County in Oklahoma. Covered, I think, by the Tulsa area media market. Anyway, they went out there and they interviewed everybody and said, what's this all about? They posted their story at 5:08. At 5:28, News on 6, whatever channel, whatever the call letters are for News on 6, you can find them at newson6.com for your purposes, reported that a member of the gang out there guarding the gun shop had in fact shot himself. And by the way, how did he shoot himself? He shot himself doing that thing which never happens and cannot happen, dropping his pistol from a holster and having it hit the ground, fire, and shoot him in the arm. And I love it when they howl, that can't happen. You people don't understand guns. Modern guns don't do that. Now, I should point out that what he had on his side was an old-style Colt 45. So the point may still hold. Modern guns don't fire when dropped, which only calls into question why an awesome gun ninja expert like you would go on a protection mission with an old-style Colt 45 in a bucket holster. Because, damn, boy, you're likely to drop that thing and shoot yourself. And 20 minutes later, he had dropped it and shot himself because he was such an expert. Because he's so smart and knows everything about guns, and you're not allowed to talk to him because you said clip once. Well, that dummy's got a hole in him now, and he's going to have to deal with it. And he's a big, hard guy, too. I mean, we don't know that much about him, but we know his name from the various reports that are out there. And if you search on his name and take a look at his profile picture and everything, he's a big toughie. And he's going to teach everybody a lesson with a hole in his arm. What a dope. Anyway, so that happened, and it happened really fast. And I just wanted to point that out by way of reminding everybody what my whole mission originally was with Gun Fail. Please, everybody, stop and think a little bit. Can we look at this and just say, wherever the gun nuts get their way, whenever they say something dumb like, well, why don't we put a whole bunch of people with AR-15s and handguns there, and they'll protect us from the maniacs? And people push back and they say that's not going to work, or that's going to be dangerous, or we're going to need some kind of regulation. Oh, screw you, you liberal commie nuts. Regulation kills everything. It says right here, shall not be infringed. What's your problem? But still, there's pushback and official channels. Things move slowly. People are worried about liabilities, and so it slows things down. And it doesn't happen Wild West style the way the gun nuts want it to. But in situations like these, outside of the recruiting stations where it's unclear, at least initially, who's in control and who can say they can and can't bring guns there, or at this gun shop where obviously the people in control who can say who can and can't bring guns there say, yeah, bring whatever you want. Come on. Whenever they get their way and there's no pushback, there's either no time for pushback or no obvious channel for pushback, and they get to do what they want, within days they have had accidents. In the month since these nuts started showing up outside of places unbidden to provide so-called security, 3 times they have accidentally discharged their weapons. Only once did they not actually shoot somebody by shooting into the parking lot. And that guy was handing over his AR-15 to apparently a total stranger who asked to see the gun. Can I see it? Sure. What a guard this guy is. So let me ask you, what's missing from the scenario, right? If the gun nuts who say it would be a great idea to let anybody who has a personal weapon carry it in school to protect the kids who are there, what's the difference? If they get their way, what's the difference between these 3 accident scenarios and the school? There would be gun nuts in both. There would be guns in both. What would be in the schools that isn't present outside of the recruiting stations and Muslim-free gun shops? And the answer is 30 squirming children per room. So I ask you, gun nuts, when you go to your local school board meeting and propose this as a great idea, please keep this in mind, that 3 accidents have happened within a single month when you guys got your way and you got to carry what you wanted to carry where you wanted to carry it to provide the security you thought you had to provide. Twice you shot yourselves. Once you got away lucky and hit a parking lot. Add 30 curious, squirming children per room to the equation and tell me you think it's a good idea. And if you do tell me it's a good idea, you're crazy and you're one of those mentally troubled people who is not allowed to have a gun from here on in. Just my snap adjudication, but guess what? I might be able to pull that one off. Good morning, Greg. How are you? Anybody providing security there in your house?
Not that I know of. Sorry I'm
out.
late. A little business, and so I didn't have a chance to listen to the intro, so I had no idea what you said, which is always fun jumping in.
Well, if there's no AR-15s outside
right.
your house, you're...
Yeah.
All right, yeah, okay. So you've answered the question correctly.
Yeah.
How much background do you need for that?
I could see out my window somebody's mowing the lawn across the street, so I don't know if that's the same thing.
Yeah, well, they might run over a rock.
Yeah,
duck.
I suppose. So, it's a beautiful day here in Connecticut.
Terrific.
And still sore from hiking the Appalachian Trail over the weekend, but that's supposed to happen at my age anyway, so I hopefully recover by October. Yeah, there's a new CNN poll out today. I don't know if you had a chance to talk about that.
No, I have not. I mean, I had a chance. I just didn't do it.
Yeah, but you blew it. You didn't do it. So let's talk a little horse race here.
To be honest there. Yes.
The big headlines are, things are tightening. What does that
Okay.
mean? The only thing it means is that whereas Trump used to be losing by 19 or so, now he's only losing by 6. So here are the numbers, and then we'll get to the headlines, which are completely different. The numbers are Clinton 52, Bush 43 among registered voters. Clinton 51, Trump 45, Clinton 52, Walker 46, Clinton 53, Fiorina 43. So basically, Hillary's leading everybody between 6 and 10 points. And the headline is, it's really getting close. I have to remind people that McCain lost by 7, and that was considered a landslide. And when Kerry lost by 3 to Bush, that was considered a mandate.
Ah.
So a 6 to 10 point lead is actually pretty impressive, given that she's been hammered all summer by everybody.
Yeah. Oh, mandate. I can't wait.
So, yeah, we're looking for a new mandate. I mean, the fact of the matter is she's above 50% in the polls, doing fairly well. She's, again, the Clinton, Bernie Sanders part of the poll is also closing a little bit in that regard. She beats Sanders 47 to 29 with Joe Biden in the race. If you take Joe Biden out and allocate Biden second choice, because Clinton is most people's second choice, more than Bernie, then it's 56-33.
Okay.
Is that close? Well, it depends how you look at it.
All right. How should we look at it?
I look at it as Bernie has done better than he did 6 months ago and still doesn't show much chance of actually winning. People will get mad at me for saying that, but that's what the numbers show.
Well, numbers are stupid.
Yeah. He's got core constituency. If you go back and dig in the poll, and Greg Sargent has a nice piece about this morning that he just put up.
Yeah.
If you look at people who think income inequality is the most important issue, he beats her. They tie on the economy. She wins on the other issues. She wins with other demographics besides white liberal progressives. And it's for that reason that she has strength in places, I don't know, like South Carolina, Mississippi, and the other 48 states that aren't Iowa and New Hampshire, which in fact will determine who the nominee is going to be. So Bernie's doing well, continuing to get big crowds, and as Greg Sargent points out, incredibly important is making sure that income inequality is part of the conversation, is part of what she's running on. Pushing her to make sure that she's including that much more in her message than she otherwise would. She's trying to calibrate, as politicians do, a primary message that will also work in the general, so she doesn't have to flip-flop. And, it's all good.
All right. Well, as long as it's all good, I can't complain, I guess.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's one interesting question. We'd like to get your overall opinion in the CNN poll of some people in the news. As I read each name, please say if you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of these people. They didn't ask about Kagro in the morning.
How could that be?
I don't know. Registered voters, Joe Biden, 47 favorable, 46 unfavorable. Keep that in mind for those dying for him to jump in the race. Hillary Clinton, 43 favorable, 55 unfavorable. Better than Jeb Bush from yesterday, by the way. Bernie Sanders, 36-29. So he is one of those politicians that has more favorable than unfavorable. Still 25% have never heard of him, which tells us it's still summer. And what I found interesting is they also include the Black Lives Matter movement.
Oh, okay, good.
Favorable 39.
They must be highly ineffective.
Yeah, favorable 39, unfavorable 32. So overall favorable. 20% have never heard of. It's interesting because more people have never heard of Bernie Sanders than have never heard of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Ha. Well, that is something.
So,
I don't know what, but it
I
is
don't know
something.
what, but it is something. So
Right.
But generally favorable response, and all of that is good. And then, of course, they ask, did Hillary do or not do something wrong with the personal email? 56% said did do something wrong, and 39% said did not do something wrong. So, there's that. I think that the email question is real. The question isn't that. It's how important is it? And Republicans think it's as important as Benghazi, and Democrats don't.
Yeah, largely. That's probably going to be the case. There is something to it, no doubt. The fact that people are puzzled as to how and why official emails could be handled this way. Okay, fair question. I'm still puzzled by it. What do you mean you get to have your own server? But I don't know. Giant hole in the law. Not a good hole.
It's not a good hole, but if that's what the rules were at the time, that's what the rules were at the time.
Yeah. I hate to see exploited rules that way, but I don't know. Now what?
I don't know. Given how much the government is hacked, I really don't know which is the safer server, honestly.
True.
But here we have, regardless of who you're voting for, which Democratic candidate do you think can best handle the economy?
The economy.
Registered voters. We'll just look at registered voters. Clinton, 45, Sanders, 26.
45-26. Really? Yeah. All right.
Yep. Who can best handle race relations? Clinton, 50, Sanders, 26. This is all going to parallel who you're voting for.
That and factor in the I don't know, I've never heard of him issue.
Right. Foreign policy is an interesting.
Okay.
Who can handle best foreign policy? Clinton, 61. Biden, 22. Remember, Biden has vast amounts of experience with this, including his foreign relations stuff in the Senate. Sanders, 9.
Yeah. I'm okay. He suffers from lack of a track record, and
Now, if that's something that you use to choose, who is presidential and who is not, it's a big deal. Most people don't vote on foreign policy, but I just thought it was interesting. That's the one thing Biden actually has a little bit of support there, but not that much. Hillary gets all the numbers for that.
That is
income gap between rich and poor Americans. Clinton 41 and Sanders 34.
All right, so there you can see where at least there's been some learning about who Bernie Sanders is and what he stands for. Things begin to, it sinks in. You see his numbers are better there.
Right.
That must drive Sanders supporters crazy to see numbers like that because, they say, well, have you compared the two platforms? And the answer is no. Most people have not compared the two platforms.
It's summer. It's August. Yeah. People really start paying attention about 3 months before it matters. So
there's the room for growth.
Yeah, December, January, February, it'll start to matter in Iowa, and it'll start to matter in New Hampshire, and then it'll be months later that people really start to pay attention, depending upon where your own primary is.
Yeah.
So to say that doesn't mean that things won't change by that time, but this is what it is, and it does show the mountain that Bernie and his supporters are going to have to climb if he's to win.
Yes.
She's going to have to drop. He's going to have to grow. It's just, otherwise.
Well, there's only really the two of them, so yeah.
But they both have to happen. Otherwise, it is what it is. Regardless of how do you plan to vote, do you think that Joe Biden should get in or stay out?
Okay.
It's pretty much split. All Democrats, 49 in, 48 out. Registered voters, 53 in and 45 out. Personally, I don't think he's getting in.
Yeah, I don't think he needs the aggravation.
There you go. So, who do you think would do a better job as president? Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden. Would you do better than Clinton or worse than Clinton? So Clinton is the standard that they're comparing everybody to.
Right.
So Bernie Sanders, 31% think that he would do better than Clinton. These are all registered Democrats. Let's see. Looks like I can't tell whether it's all. No, this is registered Democrats.
Okay.
Registered voters. Better than Clinton, 31%. Worse than Clinton, 37%. And for Joe Biden, better than Clinton, 27%. Worse than Clinton, 35%. I mention these because it's not like there's this huge driving force within the Democratic Party to get Biden in the race. You might get that impression from reading news reports, just like Al Gore is going to run and Mike Dukakis is going to run, and Bill Clinton's going to run for another term against his wife. There's all this garbage out there from board reporters. We talked about that yesterday with the Jack Schaefer piece.
Yes.
But when you actually look at the numbers, where's the support for a Biden candidacy? I just don't see it. The numbers just aren't there.
Yeah, I don't feel it myself, but I don't know. I'm sure there are such people. There's always one for somebody.
Right. So again, to put in perspective the numbers for Clinton versus Trump, in June of 2015, Clinton beat Trump 59-34. Now she beats him 52-43 with all Americans. And with registered voters, it used to be 59-35. Now it's 51-45. So it's definitely tightened to the point where he's only losing by a landslide.
Okay. Well, that's good because we have words for that one.
We do. But, again, keep that in perspective. Oh, my gosh, it's tightening. You have to scratch your head when you look and you see reports of it's gone from a 26-point lead to a 19-point lead or whatever. When you have numbers like that, that's not tightening.
Yeah, not much. That's the trying to come up with clickable headlines.
Exactly, and it's summer.
Well, we clicked.
Anyway, one of the most fascinating pieces that I found for my roundup today is from Vox by Lee Drutman, who I do not know.
A new hire. We'll pretend he's a new hire. I don't know.
I don't know. But the interesting piece here is it's about Donald and what he, quote, gets about the electorate, and really try to put in fairly simple information here. Looking at the National Election Studies data.
Yeah.
Okay. Trump has positions on two things which are fairly clear. He wants to decrease immigration and increase Social Security.
I had forgotten about the Social Security part.
Okay. But that's part of his appeal. The Republican elite, the one percenters, want to decrease Social Security so they pay less taxes, and they want to increase immigration so they get cheap labor.
Yes.
Notice this is the exact opposite of Donald Trump.
I do.
Now, one percenters are one percenters because guess how much of the population they represent?
Is the answer percent?
1%.
Is it the other word? One.
So
I had a 50-50 shot and I picked the wrong word.
The point is that Trump voters far outnumber the Republican elite. And this is the problem Republicans have with every election. They have to fool their electorate into thinking and voting for something other than what they really want. Which, by the way, is why Republicans are so unhappy with Republicans.
Yeah. Weird.
So Trump is representing and speaking for the Republican base. And it doesn't matter what the establishment candidates like Jeb say, who I think is running. Even though I still think he's the leading candidate to take the nomination, I think he's running an incredibly weak candidacy. And so is Walker. The establishment guys are doing very badly compared to Trump because Trump is representing what voters actually want.
And
it may not make
I think
sense.
He's got
It may not be
too.
doable. It may not be achievable. And yeah, you're right. He's got the money to spread this message.
Well, he's got some money to be a one percenter. I heard he was a rich guy.
But that means they can't cut him off.
But he's a class traitor. Why doesn't that?
He is. So was Roosevelt. Fairly well.
Well, we love those then.
Right? I mean, I'm just saying it's a really interesting piece that just points out that so long as Trump continues to speak for the Republican electorate, at least 25-30% of them, he is not going away. What may happen is the others may drop out and opposition to Trump coagulates, starts to...
it's a good word for it.
Starts to gel around somebody else. And therefore, 25% doesn't look as good when the other guy gets 75%. But when you're running against 16 people, 25% is enough to win. So it's a fascinating dynamic here. And I think that expecting Trump to go away is wrong. He's never going to go away because 25% of the population that votes Republican completely and totally agrees with him.
How about
By the
hoping
way,
he goes away?
that also makes it much harder to claim that Trump isn't a real Republican or that he's not a real conservative or that he's not this or he's not that. He is the Republican Party. And the other side of that I thought was really interesting, and I thought you would like this piece. It's back in 2009, and it's a look by David Bernstein in the old Boston Phoenix about the grifter conservative book industry.
Oh, yeah?
Glenn Beck's arguing with idiots and going rogue with Sarah Palin and Michelle Malkin and a guy named Mark Levin. He makes the point that this nativist, Pappy Cannonist trend has always existed within the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I love the title of his piece. It's called "Reading is Fundamentalist," and it's about the fact that some of these conservative titles top the New York Times bestseller, not just because they buy up the books, which does happen as well, but sometimes because actually people are buying them. And that for Trump to talk about immigration in this fashion, as Greg Sargent has pointed out, poll after poll shows that there's a good chunk of the population that completely agrees with him, again, and doesn't agree with the 1%ers who want more cheap labor here. So Trump isn't, in that sense, changing the Republican Party. He's reflecting the Republican Party. He's not driving the Republican Party to be nativist. They already are, and they have been for some time, ever since Pat Buchanan.
True. And I guess that's a fine point on it. I think we skate on that point because we've been saying he's been driving policy. Policy, of course, is the province of the elite and the party regulars usually.
Right. Exactly.
So I think we technically are okay on that one. And not like it wasn't a skilled word choice, by the way. But hey, we're awesome. I mean, I might as well say so. Donald Trump has made that popular.
Right. Anyway, Mark Murray is reflecting on Twitter what I have been saying for the past couple of days, even starting with this birthright thing.
Oh, good for you, Mark.
The biggest news in the 2016 race over the last 72 hours, the birthright citizenship debate inside the GOP. A reminder, if the GOP cannot get close to 40% of the Latino vote in 2016, it's going to have a hard time winning the general. In fact, it won't win the general. So I have this piece here from the New York Times, which I excerpted, so you don't have to click it. If Republicans want to be competitive in the general election, they have to distance themselves from Trump on both illegal and legal immigration, said Alfonso Aguilar, an official in W's administration and the executive director of the American Principle Project Latino Partnership, a conservative group. Now remember, this is a conservative Latino group speaking. His proposal on birthright citizenship is very insulting to Latinos, and every day this is the top story on Spanish language media, something I think we don't emphasize enough. They are hammering, Ramos and the others are hammering Trump and the Republicans on this every single day. Right now, if the other candidates don't respond to Trump, Latinos will buy the argument that Republicans agree with him. And that's the point. They're now in a bind not because Trump is pushing policy, but they're forcing the other Republicans to comment on this policy. So half of the Republicans, seven of them, agreeing that they ought to get rid of the 14th Amendment with a wave of their wand, as Jeb Bush put it, or a snap of the fingers, without specifics, is going to kill him.
Mm-hmm. Well, good.
Well, yeah.
How long do I have to wait?
You have to wait a year. Where's the proof? Well, you got to wait for that. You really have to get a candidate, and then you have to see what happens over time. But, I'm saying that whereas we're reading the Anglo press, the Latino press is hammering them on this, and it is not going to let up, and it is not going to go away.
Well, all right. We need to, one, pay more attention to the Latino press, and two, heavily fund the Latino press.
Exactly. Get Trump on for more interviews. I think that'd be very important to do.
I would like to see whether he declines an interview. I've never seen him really do that. Well, actually, I have seen him do that, now that I think about it. But
he calls in.
Yeah. Well,
or otherwise says, "No, that's a stupid question. You're a very naive person."
But he is a little tricky in that sense. I mean, he's a very big publicity hog, true, but he's not the type that won't walk out of an interview when he thinks it's ridiculous. Now, his definition of ridiculous isn't always on the mark, but yeah, I've seen him walk on interviews before when he thought it wasn't going his way or was too stupid. So, yeah. I don't know. I guess he's a little savvier about that than most media hogs.
Well, he is. He's had 30 years of dealing with the New York media, so
yeah.
He's pretty good at that. Or diverting, or changing the subject, or not answering the question, or talking about something he wants to talk about. They're all good at it. He's very good at it. Mm-hmm. So those in favor of ending birthright citizenship, for the record: Donald Trump, Rand Paul, Rick Santorum, Lindsey Graham, Chris Christie, Bobby Jindal, and Scott Walker.
Okay. Is it just that they haven't asked the others because we don't know where they are, or
no? The others, those opposed to ending birthright citizenship: Rubio, Bush. The two that have an idea of how they're getting hammered every day on Latino media, George Pataki and Carly Fiorina. Those are opposing it. And those who have switched their position, that would be John Kasich. He supported amending the Constitution to end birthright citizenship. In recent interviews, he explained he switched his position. You'll love this because this is Congress, okay?
Yeah.
Remember the guy who just gets elected because he does the candidate in a box?
Right.
Kasich told NBC News today on Tuesday, I frankly didn't know as much about it then. You stick your name on a bill when you're in Congress and they come at you left and right. But look, I don't think we need to go there at this point. I'm at the point now where I'm extremely concerned about efforts that divide us in this country, and I'm more interested in the things that can unite us, and we have bigger fish to fry. I'm looking for other quotable bromides here. If you've been law-abiding, we're going to welcome you to a path to legalization. You pay a fine. There will be a penalty. It'll take time, but I think that's the right way to go. So he didn't completely answer the question, but said the fact that he actually voted once in the past to get rid of this doesn't have anything to do with his position. Because, come on, the guy's in Congress, and you can't expect him to pay attention to what bills are in front of him, what's actually in them.
True. A startling admission. And
from the guy with gravitas who claims his congressional experience qualifies him to be president.
Yes. Well, I mean, he's learned a lesson, certainly.
We all have we not?
Well, we have, because we've been watching it and explaining it to you as it goes on here. But yeah, he's I'm glad he's fessed up about that. And
I like that, but I just love the whole position. Look, you can't hold me accountable for a bill that I voted for or against in Congress. Come on. That was the House.
Yeah.
You don't expect us to know what's in those bills. I'm not in leadership.
No, and we never have, and I don't know. That's interesting. So now here he is telling it like it is. He's going to rocket to the top of the polls, right?
Exactly right. You know what he is going to do is he's going to screw up New Hampshire for Jeb. So that's why it's interesting to keep an eye on him there.
I will take it.
Anyway, sorry for the abbreviated roundup, but that's my abbreviated roundup for today. A lot of horse race stuff, a lot of things to say, a lot of reasons for Bernie people to get mad at me. I'm just calling as I see them, and when the polls change, I will change.
You know what? Here comes Armando. Let me let him in the door here so you can cross paths briefly. Armando?
Hey, Armando.
Hey, Greg, I just and good morning, David. Just a couple points on this CNN
it's a
poll.
show.
Have you got time for it, Greg? I didn't ask that.
Yeah, well, you got to stay on
always
because
have time for Armando. Always.
Did you look through these crosstabs?
Yeah.
I just got to them. I tell you, two of the things that really struck out. First, there's no breakout of non-white voters, which frankly makes this, just useless to us. This is just a headline at this point.
It's a small
without
sample,
knowing where non-white
and the
voters.
subsamples wouldn't be all that useful. It's really tight.
They need to oversample so they can make subs. I mean, it's pointless to me. It's pointless to poll the Democratic primary on a national or even a state level if you're not going to have the demographic breakouts. That's the key question. If you really want to take Sanders seriously, what's the key question? Can he win non-whites? If you don't give me a poll that tells me how he's doing with non-whites, then it's kind of useless, it seems to me.
Well, I don't know. I think the bottom line number, or what they call the top line number, which is really the bottom line number, kind of counts. I mean, if you're losing, it's nice to know why you're losing.
Listen,
but it's even more important to know that you're losing.
I guess. I just think that, look, it's not particularly useful even for horse race. It's not close enough. There is no national primary. So what's the purpose of a national poll? Yeah, it's great. It's a headline. Look, this, that, or the other, whatever you're going to say. But there is no national primary day.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you caught my segment before you came on. You may not have had a chance.
Yeah, I was listening. I just didn't hear much about non-whites.
But it was mostly directed at how Hillary does against the Republicans, because you're absolutely right. There really isn't enough in here to make too much of what's going on within the Democratic primary itself, other than some interesting nuggets about Biden, how people feel about him.
I think there's one other interesting
the
thing.
Bernie, Hillary stuff, I didn't find a lot new in here.
Here's the thing I thought was the most interesting nugget. If you look at question 23, the one thing they do break out, which I find weird, is Democrats, Independents, and Republican. Of course, no Republican is asked on the Democratic primary, but presumably they asked Democratic leaning Independents, whatever that means.
Yeah,
and that's where Sanders is gaining. I mean, if you look at the Democrat register, people who identify strictly as Democrats, it's 57, 19 for Sanders, and 17 for Biden. Mm-hmm. So, but on what's people who are identifying as independent, which has a plus or minus, by the way, of 8.5, which I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's almost not a poll. Let's be honest. But anyway, if we look
I
at
didn't spend too much time looking at that. It's plus or minus 23. So what?
I mean, but it does show something. It says Sanders 45, Clinton 30, Biden 10 among independents. Sanders' gain, at least from what I can tell, is all among what people who are identifying as independent.
Yeah, independents who might tend toward Democratic voting, and that's not surprising. By the way, he's an independent.
Yeah, but he's not the Beltway independent. He's not.
No, there's nothing Beltway about him.
He's not Angus King independent. He's
He's unique. He really is. I mean, there's no other figure like him in the entire Democratic Party, or maybe even in any party.
Total superstar.
Right. I guess, though, I mean, to me, the nuggets about this are trying to figure out what's going on. It's not, at least from what I can tell, I think that Clinton is absolutely cratering with white men. But that was going to happen, to be honest with you, whenever it was going to happen. It's just happening sooner than it would have. I mean, when you got to the general election, white men just don't vote for for Democrats. They just don't.
Yeah, and I doubt they're going to hugely vote for Democratic women.
Yes. I mean, so I think there'll be some slippage there, but you and I commented on Twitter on the better numbers, which are the complete poll, which is the national general election horse race. Clinton's strength with women voters is impressive. After all this, she's still, winning women by a substantial margin. It's really something. Her favorables are plus 10 with women. It's just a different story.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get it because, Donald Trump sponsors a beauty pageant, right?
No, I mean, forget it. I mean, look, I think there's two. That's an interesting point. I mean, the impact of a Donald Trump on Clinton isn't clear to me, unless you think that she's getting some sympathy or she's getting more favorable from women because of revulsion to Trump.
I think she's getting a little bit of that. I don't know that it's going to be hugely overwhelming, but I think, let's just put it this way, I think it probably is balancing the bad news she gets on the email servers. That's
interesting. So that way Trump really is helping her then, because that's an important firewall for her. And whatever else happens,
absolutely. If she loses women, she's not going anywhere.
Oh no, I know, but but I would say people of color too. I mean, in terms of the nomination, I think Sanders can. There's enough white voters that will vote for Sanders that could be a 50-50 proposition.
Iowa and New Hampshire, and that's the whole discussion about why he's so strong, particularly in New Hampshire, but at the same time, is that really representative of the rest of the country? Go down to Mississippi and South Carolina, you find a completely different electorate.
I think there's one other thing about New Hampshire that makes it more favorable to him. For Iowa, of course, not just the open primary, but it's a much easier process. Iowa, for whatever reason, creates this 3-hour circus where you have to go stand in 17 corners in order to cast a vote.
Right.
Did I tell you that I absolutely hate Iowa? Because I do.
There's more corners to stand in than there are degrees when you go out to vote. So it's like minus 14, but 17 different corners. And then, of course, if you're going to try to get anything out of Iowa, you've got to just get in the habit of looking at second and third choices.
Right, and more than that, you got to look at people who actually do this 3-hour circus that's required to vote in Iowa.
Yeah.
Talk about voting rights. My God, that's about as suppressing as anything. I don't think I would do an Iowa caucus if I was in Iowa. Spend 3 hours standing around and listening to people blather. Come on.
Well, they're your neighbors. I mean, what do? You go home and you talk to them anyway.
Yeah, I don't.
No wonder you hate Iowa.
I hate my neighbors.
For a little while, you'll look at it differently. These are your friends, these are your neighbors. Some of them are nuts, but you know who they are.
I guess
and they grow great beans, and you grow great squash, and you trade. It's not a big deal.
I'm just an East Coast elitist. Sorry.
I guess so.
Yeah, but anyway, I just thought of those two things, and I do you know if there's going to be any polls that's going to give us an actual non-white breakdown down the tap?
It's got to be large enough. You're looking for a Gallup or a Pew or some really large sample size that can give you something meaningful. So they will come, and those are the polls to look for in terms of getting that demographic breakdown. Obviously, the one that does it best and has always done it best is Pew.
All right. When
I mean,
we don't know.
Who said this? You got to deal with the polls you have, not the polls you wish you had. I want a Seltzer poll for Iowa, and I want a Pew poll for the country to look at the demographics. And until we get them, it is what it is.
Unless we can commission them. We could raise money, Kickstarter, and
so
by the time we did it.
Wants, which is large enough and accurate enough using cell phones so that you know something about these subgroups and have confidence in it. It costs a fortune, which is why you don't see it very often.
Okay. Well, I guess that's not likely to come up anytime soon.
Well, you never know. I mean, but just keep in mind, if you're really looking for that kind of information, rather than try to misinterpret tiny numbers that don't mean anything with little polls, you're better off waiting for the Pew poll and looking there. Yeah. I promise you they'll go into it in detail. And what they have will be worth looking at. All
right. Well, Armando, are you still on the line?
Yeah. I am, actually, okay. If you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to make sure. All right, so any further questions at this point?
Yeah, anybody else to insult? Let me see.
I rest my case. I got to go to work, guys, but enjoy talking to you, and we'll come back tomorrow. We'll do it again.
Okay.
Yeah. I asked you, and I wasn't sure. Your answer was a little cryptic, but let me ask you on the air.
Okay.
Can Trump really be the GOP nominee?
Sure. Why not? I think, you know what, I'm beginning to warm up to that as a possibility, only because the Republicans have a habit, it seems to me, of ending up nominating the guy that everybody has said, well, he's the front runner, but, most people just are looking for anybody but XYZ. The last couple elections seem like they've unfolded that way. It was about whose turn it was, but then there was this dissatisfied base. This is a different kind of guy, obviously. But eventually Republicans kind of get used to whoever hangs around long enough, and they'll take them. And they become convinced that person is electable. This is a little more difficult to believe, but also I point out, they also have a long history of rocketing flashes in the pan to the top of the polls, but they burn out quickly enough that you can tell it was a flash in the pan. At last time, everybody led for 15 minutes, almost literally. This is an awful long time to sit in the lead for Republicans to abandon you later on, absent some outrageous self-immolation, which is always possible.
It seems not possible anymore, right? I mean, everyone said he's self-immolated 3 times.
I mean, it has to be a self-immolation. You have to say, that's it. I give up. I no longer am eligible.
Here's why I think this is more serious than I think we thought even a week ago. Accepting everything you just said, the head-to-head numbers in the CNN poll, Trump runs best against Clinton.
I guess if that's starting to happen, then that's I assume that's part of the transition. Republicans have to become convinced that
he can win.
He's electable, and I think that they weren't at first, and now he's still there, and they're coming to terms with it, and more and more members, the expanding base or the expanding numbers of people who will admit that they are the Republican base. I guess he's bringing out a certain kind of backward Cro-Magnon pride in these people and saying, I now am comfortable saying that I am an anti-immigrant bigot. He makes it seem much more palatable because, after all, look, he's got $10 billion. Maybe I'll get $10 billion if I also hate immigrants. I don't know what the logic is, but...
I just think it's fascinating. I mean, the reality is Trump did get pilloried and pummeled in the media.
Yeah.
The Republican voter always hates the media, so they'll probably rally to defense. So there might be a little bit of that. But here's the mindset.
Annoy the media.
I've always said if Republican voters become convinced Trump can win, I think they're more than capable of nominating him. But there's the other aspect of it. If Trump becomes convinced that he can win, I think it's not going to be as easy for him to drop out.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, assuming he actually really wants to be president and isn't just kidding.
Oh, of course he does. He would, if he didn't have to have an election, and he would be president for life if they let him. I mean, that's the thing. He loves his money, no question, but he loves being famous.
Yeah, well, he doesn't have to give up the money to be
Right.
president. He gets to be an extremely rich president. It will be a very interesting experiment of him trying to navigate the bureaucracy to try to live the same lifestyle the way he wants it and be in compliance with all the rules and regulations that govern the travel and lifestyle of the president. But and he'll spend the 4 years shaking his fist at bureaucrats and saying, "Can you believe these guys? They won't let me buy a new presidential jet or whatever. I'll give it to the United States when I'm done. What's the problem?"
Right. He'll give all American citizens free helicopter rides on the South Lawn.
But yeah, I guess it's possible that they may become convinced that he can win. He's certainly, well, obviously, if you ask him, can you win? He'll say, yeah, sure. I think they should start asking him, do you believe you belong on Mount Rushmore? I think they should just up the questioning and see. I'd love to see what he says to that.
Well, he'll say, of course, I'll be the best president of all time.
Maybe not yet, but soon.
Yeah, well, maybe.
I got to get the best
I
stonemason in the world. No, not a mason, but stone carver, I guess. That'd be funny to just build one out of brick on the side of Donald Trump. But
the preferred parking.
Yeah,
stone carvers. Yeah, I just think that. Look, it's still got to be a long shot, but I don't think it was a long shot before. I thought it was an impossibility, and that for move over to that makes it interesting. And boy, what would the media do then? I mean, Clinton versus Trump, they'd be in heaven, of course, in the sense that it'd be.
They would welcome our new insect overlords.
But would they try to be serious and then say we can't have this Donald Trump be president? That's crazy. Which they sort of tried to say we can't have this Donald Trump be the GOP nominee. That's crazy. But once they get past that, will they continue to be? We can't have that.
No, they will instead write think pieces about why Huffington Post was wrong to put him in the entertainment section.
Well, they were wrong. Come on, that was ridiculous.
Well, it didn't make a difference. I mean, they were.
Huffington Post is entertainment. I mean,
yes,
they have two good political reporters, and you can read them, but they don't have like a political section.
No, I mean, it was wrong, but I wouldn't waste any time on think piece. Now I have to write a think piece about why it was a waste of time to write these think pieces. But
there you go.
You know, that an online publication to which everyone finds their way through links. Decided to put it under a different URL. It's not like a printed paper where now there won't be any Trump on page 1 because the entertainment section is section C. The entertainment stories regularly make page 1 of Huffington Post. So it doesn't to talk about it at an electronic publication was misleading and stupid. It was fun event for them to do. It was a great idea for them to generate some publicity for themselves at zero cost because that guy's so what? We're going to put him in the entertainment section.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
Guess what's on page 1 today? Entertainment. So,
under the theory of as long as I spell your name right, any publicity is good publicity.
So
then it worked.
I don't disagree with the decision from a strategic
business
standpoint. I don't even disagree with it from a substantive viewpoint because for an electronic publication, it makes zero difference where you classify it. It's literally, so you mean the word between the 4th and 5th slashes in the URL is going to be entertainment instead of politics? Oh my God. No, that doesn't make any difference. And for Chris Cillizza to, spend his precious supposedly time writing. Oh my God, you're wrong. Writing. And here I told you 2 weeks later, I'm going to tell you you're wrong. No, it's a nonsensical issue. Go away.
Yeah, well, he's a nonsensical
issue. Fight with Jay
issue.
Rosen. That makes sense.
He's a nonsensical issue. I mean, who cares? I mean, I frankly find the guy a punchline, but I'm that way. I find Ron Fournier a punchline. I find Maureen Dowd a punchline.
If he were a beer, what kind of beer would he be?
That's
I don't know.
The one with the sour face. What's that, Keystone?
Oh yeah, boy, what is that, like 1989?
I remembered it.
Shoo.
See, little things pop in my head.
Yeah.
Hopefully, no voices, just little memories.
All right.
All right. Anyway, that's all me. I've got for horse race. I have nothing of substance to discuss.
Okay.
Because I don't know anything substantive that's going on. I did write about the overclassification thing.
Oh,
that's
yeah?
That's boring. So.
Well, all right. It'll be at the heart of the whole email thing, but it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's all political. I actually do think that it's a long-standing issue, and a lot of people are pushing back. There is a good piece in Politico by Matthew Miller, not the 2% Matthew Miller. This guy was the Justice Department public affairs official, and he talked about overclassification. He's obviously Clinton partisan at this point, almost certainly, though I don't think he's officially on the campaign team, but he's a Democrat, and he's probably in the Clinton camp. But I thought he made good points. Jeff Toobin wrote a piece in the New Yorker, so you're seeing that out there. I just don't think Clinton's going to embrace that argument to defend herself. At this point, defend herself from what is sort of the question. But
yeah, now it's an optics thing. So
it is because when you get down to it, the heart of the story is it's not even private servers or private emails. None of that, frankly. It was dumb politically, but it wasn't illegal. It didn't violate any regulations. What's left to the story? Oh, well, she mishandled classified information, but she didn't because it wasn't classified at the time. And I know there's this argument, no, it was classified. It just wasn't marked as such. I said, wait a second. What do you mean it wasn't marked as such?
That's what classification means.
I mean, if you don't designate information classified, then it's not classified until you designate it. So I've had this argument with these guys with clearances and stuff at Daily Kos. I'm like, I get what you're saying, but you don't have classification authority. You don't get to just say something's classified. It takes someone with classification authority. And the way the system works, by the way, the classification authority is placed in the head of an agency, i.e. the Secretary of State, is the classification authority for the State Department. And she can designate her authority, as you know.
Yes.
And she might. And she probably did. But at the end of the day, she can overrule everybody. And the only person who can overrule her is actually the President of the United States. Because I don't care what the director of the CIA actually says about these things. The President can overrule them. I know people find that hard to believe, but the President of the United States is over the Director of National Intelligence. He's his superior. I know people find that hard to believe.
Yes.
Hello?
Well,
and related to that is the president did sign an executive order which binds the intelligence community about not overclassifying. He told them, don't do what you're doing. Yeah. And they took that executive order, they crumpled it in a ball, and they threw it in the wastebasket. They don't care. I mean, the AP story that was a big bombshell, actually I thought was exonerating because, one of the top secret documents, the things that the intelligence community just designated top secret, was a discussion of a news article about a drone attack. It was a news article. How can a news article be classified?
It can discuss information that you wish you had classified earlier, but that's all.
Well, I mean, it can if it discussed classified information and someone leaked it, by the way, then you got a leak issue to discuss, and that's maybe what you should be looking at. Who gave the information in the news article? Because that's the breach. The breach isn't discussing the news article after the fact in amongst cleared State Department personnel. The breach was the news article. If it was a breach, correct?
I guess.
I mean, we weren't, at least most of us weren't reading their discussion of the news article. We read the news article. Yes. I think that's the bigger question, but no one, this is what happens. We all check our brains at the door when it comes to politics. If we were normal people sitting around discussing, wow, this is a problem, this classified info got out there, would we be looking at the fact that it was discussed among, a news article was discussed among State Department cleared officials who about that news article, or would we be wondering how that information got in the news article? Wouldn't it be how the information got in the news article? I mean, I understand the positions on Snowden. Snowden's problem was, okay, he probably accessed information he didn't have clearance for, or maybe he did have clearance for it. Either way, the problem wasn't that he was looking at it, presumably. The problem was that he disseminated it. to the public. I mean, isn't that what classification issues are about? The public not seeing it? It's really weird, that way we look at things when politics gets involved. It just completely skews things. And of course, the final thing about that, I would say, is retroactive classification for FOIA requests is just old as can be. And it's basically a dodge to try to avoid giving information you don't want. And you just slap classified on it because that's what you get to do and no one gets to question it. But when you look back at things that are classified, the Pentagon Papers, for example, the famous leak by Daniel Ellsberg, when you look at them, there's nothing really classified in them for the most part.
Or they ought to be classified.
Or ought to be. I mean, it's, there was things that were reported in the paper. By me, at some point you got to say, well, wait a second, how can this be classified? Because the fact that we had the news article in our files is classified? Come on. It's just insane. Anyway, enough about that. As I said, it was boring, and I delivered my promise. So I'll let you move on to non-boring subjects and wish you a good day.
Yeah, well, all right. Thanks very much for stopping by. Well worth
Bye-bye.
doing. And that's it. I mean, that's a serious problem that's at the real heart of this email issue, or a large part of the email issue. And to the extent that it's optics, or what did her face look like, or how seriously do we think she took the question of, did you wipe the servers? Apparently that was the explosion yesterday. But, there is an optics issue in it. Like, why not just say no or say yes? Or I don't know. I'm not really even sure exactly what that means, but I didn't really handle the servers per se. I was in physical control of them. I guess they were they were on property I owned, but I don't know how many people really believe that Hillary Clinton maintained her own servers, or even necessarily gave orders about how they ought to be maintained. She probably outlined the general desire, and there may have been, could there have been an overzealous or overprotective aide who says we better wipe these things? Sure, there could have been, and they would have done so thinking that they were doing Hillary a big favor, and she may well have agreed that they were doing her a big favor. On the other hand, I guess it's entirely possible that she could have said, no, I have nothing to hide. What are you doing? Now it makes it look like I really do. I'm not really sure about any of that. I'm not sure where she stands on that. But, the real issue at present has to break down at the level of, well, what are you talking about when you say classified information? Because we're not clear on that. And if people all understood the entirety of the process, they might think very differently about how to regard the information that was allegedly shared via email, if you even get to take a look at that. All right. Moving on from there, I'll remind everybody that it is Wednesday and Joan McCarter Day, so we do expect to talk with Joan in a little bit. I'll get to a couple other stories in between. We'll try and make our segue over to that. It'll be great. You'll love it. It's going to be a totally fantastic day. I really have to give myself a break and allow myself to praise myself the way Donald Trump is. I hope that as president he ushers in a new era of self-confidence for everyone. I'm not certain that that's going to be the outcome, but it would at least be a silver lining to the dark, dark, and terrible cloud of a Donald Trump presidency. At least I think so. I say that now. Maybe in 4 to 8 years I'll feel differently. Maybe I'll be forced to feel differently. Maybe I'll be an employee of Trump Incorporated, and I'll feel differently for that reason. Here's Joan, as a matter of fact, right on time. Good morning, Joan. How you doing?
Good morning. I couldn't have timed that better.
No. And you know what? No matter when you came, we would have said, this is fantastic. Right on time.
Why, thank you.
No problem at all there. Okay, hey, how's it going? Are things quieter for you these days with Congress out, or just you keeping you busy with other stuff?
Keeping me busy.
Yeah. We see
lots of policy stuff. Lots of policy stuff bubbles up in August when people have time to think about it. So that gives me lots of policy stuff to talk about.
Well, that's at least it's better. When you stay busy, you're talking about things that make a certain amount of sense, as opposed to here are the things that don't make any goddamn sense. this week.
Well, I did have to write about Hillary Clinton and emails again this morning because, you have to.
Yes.
And
well, then we
really
can
is
continue
sort
on the
of
subject.
It's kind of a remarkable article at Politico. The big headline, Hillary gets testy over emails, to which Peter Dow had a pretty good tweet in response. George Bush, or rather Jeb Bush, gets firm when answering tough questions, but Hillary gets testy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Right. I also noticed the headline, I think, in The Hill they were running, and somebody pointed out, how do you get the headline that The Hill gets out of this? Hillary Clinton pulls the plug on a presser, when what happened here was that apparently, according to this person, that she stayed extra time to answer a few more questions and then finally said, all right, I really do have to get going.
Yeah. And she answered questions.
Yeah. So that's not really pulling the plug.
As far as the story has gone thus far, as all evidence points to thus far, she answered truthfully.
Wow.
So she knew, she answered. She says, I've taken responsibility. Yes, this was a private server, and probably that was a big mistake. In retrospect, it wasn't the convenience I thought it was. It was mine. I take responsibility for it, but the emails that are under question weren't even sent by me. Ah.
That is weird.
So, that was not enough for the media, the traditional media. And then there's the little bit about how there was this tremendous disconnect between what all of the press found so critical for emails versus what the people wanted to talk about who were there at the event. And there was no click of realization in the reporter's mind that, hey, maybe this is a story. Maybe the fact that the voters don't really care about this email thing is something I ought to look into.
That's certainly a possibility. Or at the very least, I've been embedded to follow this campaign, not because the idea is that, if she won't stand here in Washington and answer our questions, we'll just dog her around the country and ask the Washington questions elsewhere. You could do that by phone or whatever, or write your articles from wherever you're based. But I suppose the idea of paying all that money to fly you around with her when she goes to visit with crowds in every state is so that you can write a story on what happened when she interacted with those crowds.
You could maybe.
I don't know.
Or you could ask people in the crowd, which is what she did.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
What do you think about Hillary's emails?
I don't care. Right. Oh, but they're partisan. Well, then why embed yourself with them? Duh. I don't know. I could have told you they were partisan, and I didn't even leave the house.
There you go.
So anyway, I don't know. I'm not really
much
sure.
easier
Just from
to
an
report
editorial perspective, you would think people would say, we might be wasting our time with this.
Just might.
Well, let's see. So I saw this one, and I saw, okay, maybe a judgment call how you characterize her reaction to things like that. But if they really aren't looking at what's going on in the crowd, then, again, they could have watched it on television and written it from Washington.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they're missing they're missing the larger part of the story, which is, maybe outside of Washington, D.C., we really want to hear things other than about the emails.
Yeah. It would be interesting to compare their answers side by side, defending the story like this to readers and critics, and then put that side by side with the way they answer questions maybe from management consultants who are brought in by the editorial staff to question whether or not they ought to be sent on the road after all. Oh, no, you got to be there to get the nuance from the crowd. Really? Because it's not in your story.
Yeah.
Well,
except for the Iowa State Fair stories, because,
of course. Here's what she ate.
Yeah.
Here's what she ate. I know. I saw it in a picture.
A pork chop on a stick.
Yeah, so I'll send a photographer next time, and you stay home.
Yeah.
I can't get the photography without sending somebody there. That I know.
Hey, it works for Daily Kos.
Yeah. I don't know. We're able to do it. By the way, congratulations to the entire pool of candidates this year for finding something on a stick that's suitably Iowan.
But it was not a corn dog.
Yeah, that doesn't look really strange when you eat it. I knew all along there were other foods there that you could eat, and you didn't have to eat, corn dogs to be Iowan. Pork chop, the pork is local, I would assume, and it's great pork chops, and it's it's shaped differently and everything.
Apparently, and I don't know if it's true or not. I saw a tweet or something that Jeb was going to go for the corn dog and was waylaid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he go pork chop too?
And the staffer with him said, it's because he's paleo.
Yeah, I figured that would be a better excuse for him. But yeah, I've noticed almost everybody I've seen a picture of, it's been pork chop, pork chop, pork chop.
Yeah.
So great. I know somebody gets the credit for that one. They were the first to stumble on it, and I bet you there were other staffers like, the pork chop, fantastic. Phew, thank God. I was going to have them put the corn dog on a stick sideways just to not have this picture, but they would never do it. But pork chop is the answer, so now you have it, and you're all safe to go eat there now. Although why they don't eat I know on a stick, big deal and everything, but
yeah,
you never see the candidates eat the deep fried Twinkie or Snickers bar, and I would think that would be much more, fun and delicious and and regular person-ish than eating a bite of pork chop and throwing it out, which is what they're doing.
Well, yeah.
Poor pigs.
Get the picture and yeah.
Anyway, good job.
Pork chop on a stick. Yeah.
I mean,
anyway,
it's if you really hate knives and forks, and plastic silverware doesn't work on a pork chop, not very well. I've tried it. The Virginia State Fair has great pork chops, but I don't think they ever put them on a stick usually, but I guess they do now because now it's
because everything has to be on a stick.
Yeah, right, including salad, which is amazing. They actually have that now.
Salad on a stick.
Yeah, caprese salad. They use cherry tomatoes and the small curds of mozzarella cheese, and I guess you could always stick a stick through a basil leaf. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
I have not been spending enough time in state fairs.
No?
No.
Is it close to you?
It is close to me. I'm not spending time outside right now, actually.
Oh. All right. Well, you probably will too.
I don't know if you've seen, but the entire West is on fire.
Oh. Well, that'll explain it.
The entire Northwestern California. So, it's hazy looking across the street.
Oh. Well, then the fire is as close as the fair.
Well, yeah, one of them, several of them actually. We are completely surrounded by fire. So any way the wind blows is going to bring smoke into our valley. And in fact, the entire West, pretty much, except for the I don't know, 100 miles or so from the ocean inland. We are laboring under this dense cloud of orangish gray.
Well, that's not so good.
It's not so good. And in fact, we are at level 5.
Oh.
The National Interagency Fire Center says level 5 is tops.
That's fire terror alert.
It really is. And in fact, the Army has been deployed in some places.
Great. This is a good time, then, as I found on CNN to be the case, to learn that military surplus flamethrowers are being offered for sale to the public.
What could go wrong?
Right. So maybe you want to burn a firewall around your house and, burn out a trench or something like that, or just blow up tannerite in a can with a flamethrower. Go on out. Bring the kids, why don't you? And have a great time in the arid West. It's
seriously, if you're in the arid West, don't do anything. Don't move. 2 of the most troublesome fires we've had, because they're closest to people, one was caused by a spark from a circular saw at a construction site.
That's pretty
And another was caused by a guy trying to mow down tall grass so it would be less likely to burn. It
Whoops.
kicked up a rock or something, and that created enough to start a fire.
That's really you can hardly blame a person for trying to do that.
Yeah.
And it still
and
starts
it
a
wasn't,
fire.
It's a tinderbox
Really?
in the entire West.
I very frequently see a lot of reports of fires like that started by people who are out target shooting as well, particularly if they like to use tracer rounds.
Yeah, we get a lot of those too.
They burn really hot and they set the grass on fire. So watch out for that. I know it's a Second Amendment right and all, and maybe you have lots of room and you're not going to hit anybody, but think about fire hazard as well. I don't know, bring a bucket of water. What's the big deal? The Boy Scouts tell you can't start a fire intentionally without a bucket of water. Just bring one with you to the gun range.
Or if you're
don't
mowing or using a circular saw. Yeah,
don't pour it on the saw. Just wait. But boy, that's some tough conditions. I mean, honestly, a circular saw. You don't even realize that they create sparks.
I know.
Yeah, because usually it's there's some humidity in the air and not everything around you is tinder. Wow. All right. Well, that's too bad.
So
let us know if you have to
Idaho
evacuate.
report. But it's better than the situation in 2006.
Oh.
When we were also at a level 5 and we didn't necessarily have so many troops to rely upon to come in and help us fight the fires.
Why? Where were they?
Well, yeah, where were they? National Guard and Army.
Okay.
So at least they're here to help.
Yes. They're glad to be there too.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that is worrisome. Okay. Well, let's see. I'm scrolling down the your list of stories here, trying to look over what you've been discussing. What's anything else that you thought you might make good for sharing material?
Well, we are ramping up, of course, efforts to defend Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
This was a good one. Planned Parenthood is ramping up efforts to defend Planned Parenthood.
Well, that's good news.
Yes, it is very good news. They've taken out ads in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and New Hampshire.
Yes.
Reminding folks that their senators were among those who voted to defund Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
And those senators would be, of course, Kelly Ayotte, Rob Portman, Ron Johnson, and Pat Toomey, who are all up for re-election next year.
Yes.
In states where 3/4 of the people like Planned Parenthood a lot. And think it would be a bad idea to take its money away. And a really, really bad idea to shut down government over taking Planned Parenthood's money away.
No doubt. Now, the people who say that they like Planned Parenthood, I guess, are frequently people who, it's not just abstract, it's people who have depended on them for care in the past, generally, I would guess.
Probably not, because we're talking 70% of people who really like Planned Parenthood.
So they can't all be going there.
No, they just know the Planned Parenthood has been there, providing health care for people.
Yeah.
They trust it. They are not obsessed with abortion.
Which, generally speaking, of course, since 1970-something, not funded with federal dollars, unless you believe that every dollar never leaves the hands of the government, no matter who's got it.
1976.
Yeah. Hyde Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right. I wonder. Yeah. So, ramping up efforts to defend them. I wonder if they have been doing any thinking about letting people who do depend on them for care know how much care would cost in the wake of federal defunding, if they're able to provide it at all. It might be interesting to let people know that checkup that you had for X dollars will now be 3X dollars next time you come in.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, what Planned Parenthood would try to do, of course, is to increase its private funding to provide that care, and it would have to. Because a lot of folks do rely on Planned Parenthood for their primary care.
Yeah.
Men, too. Men can go to Planned Parenthood and get checkups, too.
Why, are men parents? Where do they fit into this whole reproductive system?
Getting all of the federal funding out of Planned Parenthood is a difficult thing. It means taking Medicaid funding away primarily. And it means then having one less place for a poorer person to go get health care, which, is not something that Republicans are going to care about. Right. But it is a fact that getting rid of Medicaid funding at Planned Parenthood is going to make access to health care even more difficult for these folks.
Yeah.
So, and it's very complicated as well. And probably illegal.
Illegal?
Yeah. Since states can't actually defund Medicaid participants, providers, unless they've committed some kind of fraud.
I see. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Where bromides meet policy, well, we'll just defund them. I mean, that's their answer to everything, and it's not about flipping a switch and just turn off the switch labeled Planned Parenthood and everything will be fine. Which, of course, for these guys only feeds their anger about the federal government. Well, that should be. Why does everything have to be so damn complicated? Because there's 300 million people and billions and trillions of dollars going to a million different operations. And that's why you're supposed to have a smart person at the head of it all, not an idiot. But you've given up on that, so it's going to be hard to explain the rest of it to you. But yeah, there's not just a bunch of boxes and you just turn over the Planned Parenthood box and put the money elsewhere. It doesn't go like that.
No, it doesn't go like that. And in fact, it has gone to federal courts in several states. And as I believe all the way up to the Supreme Court in one, saying, no, you can't do this with Medicaid money. You can't just pick and choose states. It hasn't been taken to court in every state that's tried it. Texas, I think it hasn't been challenged legally thus far.
Okay.
But as more states try to do it, you will see more states being challenged.
Yes.
In the courts. And more states are trying to do it, despite the fact that, of course, they've all Republican states immediately launched investigations against Planned Parenthood when the videos started coming out, almost as if they knew it was coming. Weird. And none of the investigations yet have shown any wrongdoing on the part of Planned Parenthood. You have the case in Louisiana where Jindal immediately shut it down and started investigations. And the 2 Planned Parenthood clinics in Louisiana don't provide abortion services at all.
Yeah. And amazingly, only out of the Republican field, the only person who's been able to recognize that and understand that something is wrong with that is Donald Trump. So, I don't know. I mean, he runs large-ish and complex-ish organizations. Not anything by comparison to the federal government, of course, but the people who run states, who are at least, supposedly comparable to the federal government, if not in size, then at least somewhat like an organization, but they don't seem to understand that either. That is weird. So, I see your piece here about the vulnerable senators. So, what's our action on it exactly? Is it a petition to those senators' offices, or?
We haven't gotten that one going yet. We probably will soon.
Okay.
We've had our action team has been on skeleton crew in this vacation season. So, we're going to be ramping that up. And you will see plenty of actions from Daily Kos on Planned Parenthood in the coming months.
After they're a little rested. And we figure out exactly what the hell needs doing.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a fire. Outside your house.
It's going to depend on what happens when they come back.
That's right.
We have no idea what's going to happen when they come back. Although I think it's a pretty fair bet when you've got Ted Cruz in the mix that they are indeed going to try to shut down Planned Parenthood, or rather to shut down government over Planned Parenthood. I mean, it's Ted Cruz.
Yeah, that's what he does, and he's had zero traction this summer for anything. The only moment in the spotlight was briefly in the debate, and it's been a real drought for him in terms of press coverage. So how does he get press coverage? In the thick of a presidential campaign, he can be easily outraged. There's 10 people on the vying on the ticket who can do a better job at outraging people when there's no rules and no restriction of focus among the press. And when you corral them all into the Senate, and everybody has to cover it because it's the Senate, even though they're not doing anything, then Ted Cruz can do things. So he's going to need publicity come September.
Yes, he is. And, Rand Paul as well. Although he's not been at the forefront on this one. He's talked about it a lot, but he hasn't tried to raise too much hell with it. So we'll see. Rand Paul's also just completely tanking.
Yeah, that's true. And he lives in Kentucky, and the guy who is saying, we're not going to do this, is the senior senator from Kentucky. That's going to make things tough. Yeah,
it is. And McConnell, of course, is still insisting that we're not going to shut down government, although, of course, McConnell can't speak for the House of Representatives.
Barely for the Senate.
Where they're pretty gung-ho about the idea.
Yeah.
As usual.
So, he'll have a challenge.
He will have a challenge. And the challenge is kind of, as usual, kind of scary, because there are hard and fast deadlines, as there are on these things. The end of the fiscal year is coming up. There's going to be 23 days when Congress gets back on September 7th, I believe it is, in order to accomplish this. But that's 23 calendar days, not 23 working days. There's something like 12 working days between the Jewish holidays and weekends. They don't have a whole lot of time to figure out this budget stuff.
So it's the Jews' fault. Again, this is ridiculous. The holidays come at the same time. I know it's a different calendar, but you got to factor that in. Everybody only realizes this at the end of the summer. Oh my gosh, even September's not a good time.
No.
Oh well. Well, that's true. So 12 working days, that's not enough.
It's not enough to do all the things that they want to do. There's going to be the Iran nuclear agreement vote. There's going to be a continuing resolution. McConnell's talking about trying to do cybersecurity again.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole keeping the federal government open for the next year thing.
Yeah. All right. So he'll have to start working on getting them used to the idea of at least probably one CR to give themselves more time on that front.
Yeah, there's going to have to be a CR. But on the other side, there's quite a fight with Democrats and with President Obama because of, we've talked about before, the cooking of the books that they're doing with the Overseas Contingency Fund.
Yes.
For the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that are not ongoing, that are getting an infusion of $83 billion.
Yeah.
If Republicans have their way. This is their way of increasing defense spending outside of the sequester. And President Obama has threatened to veto that.
Okay.
Democrats in the Senate are saying, no. And encouraging Mitch McConnell to come to the table and negotiate with them. All Democrats plus Sanders and King sent a letter to McConnell yesterday saying, hey, we're here. Let's talk because we don't have any time. Thus far, he has not responded.
Well, okay. His eyes are elsewhere, I guess, and that's not good.
That's not good. September's going to be kind of wild.
Yeah. It looks that way. So, okay, hold on to your hats and seats and other things that could fly in different directions come September.
But it's fun. It gives me stuff to write about.
That's true. So rest up.
Yes.
And get ready for that. Wow, okay. Geez. Well, let's see. I'm taking a look around also other headlines here besides flamethrowers.
Well, and I don't know if
available.
you noticed it, but yesterday we got 2 healthcare proposals from Republicans running for
Yes.
president.
Sort of. Now,
Sort of.
yeah. Are they worth looking at? Or are they just
No.
jokes?
They're jokes.
Oh, okay. I wonder.
Both Scott Walker and Marco Rubio.
Yes.
Poor Rubio, he had a bad day yesterday.
How
Hitting
so?
kids in the face
That's a
with
good day.
balls.
Uh,
He put out this op-ed in Politico that was his big healthcare announcement, and then Scott Walker had a speech on it. So, of course,
so stomped
what
on it.
everybody did was cover Scott Walker's speech.
Yeah. So
So it
is
was
it
a
beyond
bit of an
repeal?
afterthought. Pardon?
Does it go beyond repeal? Is there a replace
Barely.
part?
Barely, it goes beyond repeal. Both of them will give tax credits in place of subsidies, which don't tell anybody, or tax credits that get immediately applied. But they're much lower tax credits.
Okay.
Not enough, certainly. The highest tax credit that Walker provides is $3,000 annually. And that's to people age 50 to 64. He groups people by age in subsidy level. The average subsidy in 2014, last year, was $3,300 and change.
All right.
The average.
Average.
So, $3,000 being the maximum that somebody older can get clearly is not going to provide the same level of coverage as Obamacare.
Yeah.
And, of course, they both block grant Medicaid, which means give the states a chunk of money that doesn't change, that doesn't respond to economic considerations in the state, doesn't respond to the employment level or anything else, is just, here's a lump sum with it what you will.
Right. Also would not reward good behavior or punish bad behavior in any way.
Right.
Hmm.
And,
Okay.
the same ideas, they'll sell insurance across state lines, which is, of course, problematic because insurance companies could then decide to all move to the states that have the least amount of regulation, the most lax regulations, so that they can provide the crappiest insurance policies.
Yes.
Really lowest common denominator.
Which is
healthcare.
Interesting, too, because probably the people who live in those states, conservative people who live in those states, are like, yes, they're going to sell insurance across state lines. Finally, we can buy insurance from states that really sell insurance.
Right.
Instead of the crap we have here. Oh, now guess what? Everybody gets your crap.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
You guys, you totally don't want this.
And what it doesn't do is replace any of the revenue. So both of them are budget busters because once you repeal, you get rid of all of the revenue generation in the law.
Yeah.
And increase the deficit unless you come up with some other replacement. And thus far they don't, other than taking it out of Medicaid.
No, they wouldn't be allowed to come up with another replacement. They've all signed the pledge not to replace things.
Exactly. So, they're worth talking about if you want to talk about the absolute dearth of ideas among Republicans for healthcare policy.
Okay. Well, yeah, we do want to talk about that.
They're worth talking about if you want to talk about the fact that they don't care at all about low-income people.
No.
But that's kind of a given.
Yeah, they're not voting for them. They're not supporting them. They're not sending them money. So that's not going to be tops in their interests. True.
No. And, they'll always have the emergency room to go to. So.
Yeah. Well, so even as ultra-conservative plans, it ends up being that basically what they're saying is, well, we'd like to repeal big Obamacare and replace it with smallish, almost Obamacare. I mean, same concept, just spend less money and get less results from it.
Yeah. It could take away a lot of health insurance from a lot of people. And then there are the things that they don't talk about, like how do you fix the prescription drug issue for seniors? They've been saving, I think we're in the billions now for what seniors have saved on prescription drugs because of the fixes in the law. That would go away. A lot of stuff that would be missing because it's a huge, complex bill that they're not answering at all.
Yeah. And not likely to, and they don't feel like they have to until they're elected anyway.
Right.
And that won't happen, so it's not even like they could leave behind a legacy for a Republican Congress to take up.
Oh, yeah, and that reminds me, that's the other thing that Mitch McConnell has promised to vote on.
Oh?
Yeah.
Hey, another repeal?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was hard.
Yeah. And doing it with reconciliation.
Ah, yes, okay. Oh, that one. Okay, so it's the same one they've been promising all along.
Yeah. But now they'll really do it, he says.
Good. I can't hardly
soon,
wait.
Soon. Because, of course, he has Scott Walker on his back saying, why haven't you repealed Obamacare? Why did you not put an Obamacare repeal on his desk?
Oh. Well, I thought you were going to do that. Then you wouldn't have a plan. We would have stepped on your speech. Not that anybody really cared. Oh, really? Your plan is to repeal Obamacare? Wow, you're kidding. What a shocker.
Yes. How innovative of you.
But if they took care of that and they repealed it, then it would be like, so what's your plan now?
Yeah.
Keep it repealed?
Yeah. And, they do recognize there are parts of Obamacare that are quite popular.
Yes.
Like pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
So they say, oh, we'll take care of that. You can have high-risk pools in the states. Which, of course, we tried before. Mm-hmm. And which, of course, didn't work because they were too expensive because that's where all the sick people were.
Yeah. I mean, you'll get charged. Well, I have an idea. We can eliminate pre-existing conditions by grouping everybody into you have to pay 17 times more for your insurance than anybody else. Great idea. Yes. We can't afford it. Well, it's there. That's the point. It's not my fault you can't afford it. It's your fault. You're a loser.
Pretty much the attitude.
All right.
So that's where we're at in healthcare. That's where we'll remain, I'm sure.
Okay.
And I'm sure I'll keep writing about it because
you will have
that's what I do.
Yeah, right. You'll also have to, I assume, at some point deal with how the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional.
I'm sure I will.
As Donald Trump has told us, the 14th Amendment won't hold up in court, which is actually a slightly more nuanced stance than to say that the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. But not that much more
given
nuanced.
that it's,
right.
in the Constitution.
Yeah, that's really the hardest one to hammer into the unconstitutional basket that you've got. But yeah, I think what he's trying to say, which also isn't very bright, but is different from the headlines he's getting slightly, is that in the very Trump way, he says, lots of lawyers agree with me on this. We don't know who any of them are. One of them is probably the guy who says it's legally impossible to rape your wife. So double check that guy's work always. Yeah. Somebody blue booked this guy's paper here. So anyway, he says that it won't stand up in court, meaning that there's, and he's probably right, there probably are some legal theorists, some of whom are federal judges, who would agree, okay, it's not that the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional for its original purpose, that is, in Section 1 anyway, bestowing citizenship on the previously enslaved. But we're done with that. They're citizens. There are no more slaves to speak of. And the application of the wording of the 14th Amendment to, as they say, undocumented immigrants who then give birth inside the United States was never the intended purpose of this. And so we would disagree that the 14th Amendment covers such things, which, again, you're talking about the strict constructionists who say, just read the words of the Constitution. Well, that's what they've been doing. But now the strict constructionists who just want you to read are all of a sudden quite concerned with the original intent of the legislators, which is, of course, backwards from where they were 2 weeks ago with King v. Burwell, etc. It quite clearly says if you're born in the United States, that's that. But we didn't mean that.
We didn't mean that.
Yeah,
we meant if you're white and you're born in the United States.
Or
right.
At the
a
time,
slave.
we meant black.
A former slave.
And born in the United States. So you see, we do both sides here. We're very fair. Now we mean white, then we meant black, because it can't be all just affirmative action, you know. Anyway, they're in a crazy place as it is, and amazingly, getting the people who are supposed to be the serious candidates who would one day displace the non-serious candidate Donald Trump saying, wait, no, me too, I also hate the 14th Amendment.
Well, and that's because they can read polls. And they see that the Republican primary voter bloc agrees with Donald Trump on immigration.
Yeah, can read polls, can't read constitutions. This is the guys we want. That's what we get.
So, you know, I think it's important to note that this is what Republicans have been reduced to.
Yes.
All of the people who have left the Republican Party and now call themselves independents are not being polled on these issues. The people who still volunteer as Republican when pollsters call them say, yeah, I'm with Donald Trump on immigration.
Yeah.
Which is something that the Republican Party might think about spending some time considering.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah, Bobby Jindal, supposedly a Rhodes Scholar, immediately jumping on this. Yes, huge problem, get rid of birthright citizenship, which could possibly have posed a problem for him personally, but at the very least, his parents were on visas at the time, so I guess if you're drawing the line at undocumented versus documented, depending on what the document is, visa is not necessarily something that a lot of people would consider a documented immigrant. You're not an immigrant. You're
as far as the most extreme of the right wing is concerned, no, those visas were not enough. He is not eligible to be president.
Yeah. But you really have to be the extreme of the extreme because as we read yesterday, one of the more serious scholarly birthers says, no, I think Bobby Jindal's okay because, and there's this crazy calculus that goes into it. I feel like Jindal's parents really wanted to stay and be American, which, by the way, is something that a lot of people who have student visas feel, and you won't let them because they've only got student visas. But,
does he feel that way about Ted Cruz as well?
Yes. Both he and Marco Rubio basically fall into the Cuban refugee exemption. They really hated Castro.
So Cruz and Rubio are okay.
Yes, because there's no doubt in his mind about where their allegiance lies. They definitely want to be American because they fled Castro's Cuba and went almost immediately to Canada. That's weird. But the point is that they eventually came back to the United States after, I guess, the money ran out in Canada and there was no more job there. And now, from then on, they definitely totally wanted to be American. Yeah, it's very tenuous. And apparently the principled birthers go even further than him and still say, no, these guys shouldn't be eligible for presidency.
Well, and Rick Santorum, too.
Yeah.
Where is Rick Santorum's family from?
Italy.
Italy. Okay.
He also is on the list. Although even among the extremists, there are some who say, well, maybe. But yeah, there really are also people who say that Rick Santorum's father was born in Italy. And so he himself doesn't qualify. It's only Rick Santorum who's first generation born in the United States. So maybe it just doesn't work. We're not sure whether his father was a citizen at the time of Santorum's birth, and we'd have to check that out. So I don't know. I assume somewhere someone has a date stamp on his naturalization. But that's really hard to read, like constitutions.
Just like the Constitution. My goodness.
Yeah, so that's where we stand with those guys. Trump, of course, clarifying everything by going on TV with Bill O'Reilly, who is a genius at clarifying things.
He's just a genius.
Yes. And he went on, and it was an amicable session, and nobody yelled MF or I want more constitutional adjudication. Very pleasant. So there we are.
There we are. I'll just reiterate that
Yes.
maybe the Republican Party ought to be looking into why it is. These are their voters.
That's true, and you know, I'm reminded every once in a while. I think way back to the beginning of the birtherism issue, and here it is, central to everything, and now actually like kind of driving not only the entirety of the Republican primary, but their actual policy pronouncements. And I think back at how, it wasn't a great deal of time, but they spent this considerable amount of time and effort in the traditional media hammering Daily Kos for being stupid and distracted enough to poll people on birtherism and exactly what percentage of self-identified Republicans would really go in for this garbage. And guess what? I'll be damned if 8 years later it doesn't turn out that exactly the numbers we found are almost exactly the numbers you're finding Donald Trump polling at 8 years later. How dumb were we?
How dumb were we?
And now, it can't get enough.
Daily Kos,
polling
like
and-
reading the news 8 years ahead of time.
Yeah. I mean, how else would you get a fix on, oh my God, what's the percentage of Republicans who are just crazy and will do anything just so long as it hurts Obama or a Democrat? And the answer is 25%.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I don't know, somehow the...
What's George W. Bush's approval rating upon
right.
leaving office?
There was that. Yeah, how much is Trump going to be able to capture? 25%. That's automatic. For whoever's the craziest. It's
Well, what percentage of people think Obamacare should be repealed?
Yeah. It's weird that we get the same number every single time. Someone should look into it.
Time.
Honestly, they invested quite a bit in making a big deal out of that being a foolish thing to ask and not even something that you could really measure with polls, and leave it to the Cheeto munchers to ask this question. And it's now at the heart of coverage of the 2016 election. Oh, well. But they won't acknowledge it.
Well, of course not.
No. So we'll keep on doing it anyway.
We will keep on doing it, and maybe we'll just even have to write upon it.
Yeah. And public policy polling really took it upon themselves after a while they really enjoyed doing these things too, because it brought a lot of publicity. That's true. And somehow, by the way, they weren't particularly stupid when they did it. It was only dumb when we commissioned it.
Right.
But they're serious, although they've come in for their share of criticism from some quarters about their continuing to do it. But there aren't a lot of pollsters who recognize the value of keeping tabs on that for some reason. But it seems pretty plain to me. We'll have to keep covering it, as I mentioned, and I guess that's as good a time as any to say, I bet they're expecting you to cover that right now.
There are things that they are expecting me to cover, yes.
What might we see today from you, from others on the front page? Have you got some secrets to reveal, some information that will later become classified?
Not a ton. I mean, you've already talked about the CNN poll with Armando and Greg. Mm-hmm. So we'll have a bit more look into that.
Okay.
We'll look into the fact that Jeb really isn't his own man, since more than half of his donations are coming from legacy Bush donors.
Yeah.
We're going to look at more polling on Planned Parenthood, which is, guess what? Popular.
Yeah, so it turns out.
Yeah.
Is it, during our discussion, Blue DuPage sent along a poll that crossed the desk. I wonder if it's going to end up being the same piece.
I think probably it is the same one.
Let's see. Reuters Ipsos poll. Okay,
yeah.
So there you go. That answers your question, Blue DuPage. They're on it, totally.
Yeah.
You're right. Good call. Okay, so we'll see you right up on that.
And, there's got to be stuff on Trump because,
Well, do we have an entertainment section?
Poor Hunter.
There we go. That's right. No one complained when we said Hunter was going to cover Donald Trump.
Oh, well, and there's another fun one for him.
Yeah?
Greg Gianforte?
Oh, I don't recognize that.
A creationist.
No wonder.
He's a rich guy, a rich Republican, whose foundation backed the Creationist Dinosaur Museum.
Creationist Dinosaur Museum. Of course, everybody's heard. What?
Yeah. He's going to be running for governor of Montana.
That might work.
Yeah, no, it won't. Not in Montana.
No? Okay. They did elect Brian Schweitzer, so they're not completely out of it up there.
Even Montana Republicans are not entirely crazy, which is why Montana is one of the places where the Kochs are getting some pretty severe blowback.
Okay.
In the Republican Party.
Still some prairie populists left.
So, yeah, Montana's probably not gonna fall this one. But hey!
Yeah, that's interesting. So he's running for governor, based on the success of his museum, or just generally, or is he trying to hide the fact that he runs this museum?
Because he wants to be governor.
All right.
He's got a ton of money, and he should be governor.
That's widely held belief.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, bad luck to you, I would say.
Yes.
All right. So that'll ought to make for interesting coverage too.
Hunter's writing it, so you know it's going to be fun.
Yeah, that ought to. And what is the? I mean, I've seen creationist museums before, but is this a creationist dinosaur museum? I haven't. Is it supposed to explain where dinosaurs fit?
How the dinosaur bones are only 6,000 years old?
Yeah, is that it? Okay. Does anybody ride dinosaurs in this museum? Because that's a famous thing. That Jesus rode dinosaurs like a horse.
I don't believe so, but hey,
nobody really believes so. Even I suspect guys who run museums like that. Okay, so I'll look out for that one. That does sound like fun. We'll get together again then next week, probably for the. Actually, they take an extra week in September, right? So it's going to be like
September 7th.
Still
I believe
2 weeks
is when they come back. Yeah.
All right, so still vacation.
You can't come back and then leave again for Labor Day.
Our kids are doing that in school.
Like how it takes 8 days to celebrate the 4th of July.
Yes. Right. Well, it's a lot of fireworks. And you got to put out the fires.
Yeah.
And bandage all the people who get shot.
Blow off their fingers.
Right. Yeah. Oh, my God. Yeah, that reminds me that exhibition football's starting again. And as a Giants fan, that's what I have to face, is that another year where one of the Giants superstars has black powdered a piece of himself off.
Seriously?
Yeah. The now famous Plaxico Burress shooting story is years old, but one of the defensive linemen, Jason Pierre-Paul, a fantastic player, blew a couple fingers off with firecrackers in the offseason. And the general management is like, what do we do? Can he play? I don't think he can play this year because he was rather severely wounded and had skin grafts and all sorts of things. And, you don't want to really necessarily say football is a great treatment for skin grafts.
No.
So you're going to have to sit out. But what do you do with a guy who's contracted to, have millions of dollars coming to him, and you were counting on him to be a big part of your defensive line? He's got can't play and might not have a hand. Because you tackle with those. Typically.
I'm sorry for your Giants.
Yeah, well, they weren't going anywhere. It's not a big deal, but it's worse than the Jets really. And those guys are terrible, punching each other. Marco Rubio could play for them, though, I understand. People were talking about giving him the starting job. He was accurate.
Well, and I did see some people saying, hey, it was a great pass.
I guess it was. I didn't see the video, but
it was just,
I heard about it.
That dumb kid couldn't catch.
Right, yeah, it's your fault. And, you're supposed to put your hands out. Did he throw him a legit pass and the kid didn't know that it would be in the air before he started looking, maybe?
Rule number 2 on campaign stops at fairs. Do not throw things at children.
It really should be, I think.
Number 1, don't eat the corn dogs. Number 2, don't throw things at children.
Yeah, or use a Nerf football at the very least. So,
Yeah.
Well, apparently a good pass. I was thinking when I heard about it, I didn't get to see how he started the play, but I thought maybe he would make a good vice presidential candidate, Rubio. Because
That's what I've been thinking.
Yeah.
That Rubio really is running for vice president.
And this could help him because, like Dick Cheney, he has now hit someone in the face from the shotgun.
Face of something.
Right. And did he take the snap from the shotgun is the question.
No.
No?
he
All
didn't.
right. Well, that would
Sorry.
be too advanced.
A nice idea.
Yeah, all right. Well, I thought we had some meshing going on there, but I guess not. All right. Well, that's as good a closer as any, I think. We're running out of time, but thanks very much, Joan, for coming by and doing your Wednesday thing with us. We'll look forward to hearing from you again next week, catching up again. Take care. And, all right, well, we'll be following along with what's happening today on the serious side and the not-so-serious side. I think we had a little bit of a Skype hiccup at the end there, so we didn't get the all clear and goodbye sign-off from Joan. But we know she wished us well. Thanks very much. Those of you listening or joining us late, it was Joan McCarter, senior political writer at Daily Kos. But I doubt very much that there's anybody who doesn't realize that at this stage. She's been such a regular for us, like Greg Dworkin, who joined us earlier in the morning. And I assume by now you're all beginning to recognize Armando's voice as well. We've got plenty to talk about tomorrow. We'll dive into our stash of stories, our growing stash of stories, as always, on Pocket. Plus, with any luck and no technical difficulties, we'll finally catch up with Ian Reifowitz, who will update us on what he's been thinking about, writing about on the front page. Always a good, interesting, in-depth discussion with him. We'll cover a wide range of topics. I would assume everything from the primary contest between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, about which he is torn and has written extensively. I would imagine Black Lives Matter and its issues and the friction that it's created quite intentionally and quite well, I think, inside of the primary battle will likely come up as well. And, of course, the Iran deal continues to occupy a great deal of his time as well. Speaking of which, I did circulate today over Twitter, retweet something I thought was real interesting. Just a good observation, good quick observation. If you didn't see it, you should look for it. Paul Waldman, not my brother, not related to me in any way as far as I can tell, but tweeting, this right here is a big part of why so many American Jews have grown ambivalent about the state of Israel, referencing a tweet from Mike Huckabee, circulating a picture of himself in Israel for meetings about what he calls the disastrous Iran deal. And look who I ran into. Great to see my friend Willie Boss Hogg. Yeah, the Willie Robertson from Duck Dynasty. That's what it comes to now. When you go to a policy meeting in Israel on serious foreign policy issues and nuclear Iran, you're likely to run into not only Mike Huckabee, who has no business being there, but the guys from Duck Dynasty, who likewise have no business being there. That's not interesting, and that's why there's this huge disconnect between the current Israeli government and American Jews, and it will continue for as long as the current Israeli government remains in power. Likely to be the case. All right, so how about what's going to happen for the rest of the day here on Netroots Radio? The after show coming up next, of course. Presidential hopeful without a prayer Mike Huckabee white-splains MLK, and how he'd be appalled that Black Lives Matter is magnifying race issues.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Lots of crazy stories, as a matter of fact, that one being the top crazy one coming up next. Also on the last half of today's program, coming up next, author and activist Katie Klabusich, I know how to say that, with a big announcement and news about IEDs, explosive devices at women's clinics. Bad stuff. Coming up next.